The sun sank low over the desert, painting the red rocks and broken hills in molten gold. The wind carried the faint hum of cicadas, and the land stretched wide and empty, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Out beyond the cactus line stood a lonely ranch, just one man's claim against the silence of the West. That man was Caleb Dawson, a quiet rancher barely 23, born with a soft voice and a good heart, but the kind of timidity that made men underestimate him. Folks called him the Virgin Rancher, not for mockery, but because he'd never once stepped into the saloon or looked a woman straight in the eyes. He spent his days tending to his cattle, fixing fences, and speaking to the stars more than to people. One evening, as the sun bled out across the horizon, Caleb saw something move in the dust, a silhouette rising taller and taller, until it dwarfed the fence posts and even the wagon parked near the barn. His heart thudded. For a moment he thought it was a mirage, one of those ghostly desert tricks whispered about by old prospectors. But no mirage cast a shadow that long. The figure grew closer, step by deliberate step, until he could make out the shape of a woman. Not just any woman, a towering, muscular Apache woman, her skin bronze and painted with tribal markings, her hair braided with feathers, her eyes burning like amber fire. She carried a tomahawk in one hand and a bow across her back. The ground seemed to tremble beneath her feet. Caleb froze, his lantern flickering in his trembling hand. He wanted to speak, but his throat turned dry as desert sand. The woman stopped 10 feet away, her gaze fixed on him like a hawk eyeing a rabbit. "You live alone?" she asked, her voice deep and commanding, yet touched with something strangely sad. Caleb nodded, unsure if he was dreaming. The woman looked around at the small, shabby ranch, the broken fence, the empty corral, the house with its single flickering lamp in the window. "No woman lives with you," she said, more a statement than a question. Caleb swallowed hard. "No, ma'am. Ain't no one but me here." For a long moment silence hung between them, heavy as the heat. Then she said the words that would echo in Caleb's heart forever. "I'm starving for a man." The air seemed to shiver. She didn't say it with lust, but with a longing deeper than hunger. "Not for flesh," she continued, seeing his frightened eyes, "but for a heart that ain't cruel." Her name was Nita, daughter of a great Apache chieftain, last of her tribe after a massacre by outlaws disguised as soldiers. She'd wandered the wasteland for years, seeking a man brave enough to look past her size, her scars, her silence. The men she found only saw a monster or a trophy. But Caleb didn't move, didn't run. He simply looked at her, really looked, and saw pain behind her strength. "You look tired," he said softly, surprising even himself. "There's water inside and a fire." That night, Nita sat by his hearth, her enormous frame almost filling the cabin. Caleb served her beans and bread, and they ate in silence. She spoke little, but her eyes watched everything. How he handled the pan, how he spoke to the horse outside, how he never raised his voice. She asked him why he lived alone. Caleb told her he'd lost his parents young and had no one left. "Maybe," he said with a sad smile, "I was waiting for someone who'd understand that loneliness ain't a curse, just a kind of peace." Nita lowered her gaze. "I used to think peace came from victory. But I've won every battle and still found none." The firelight danced on her scars. "Maybe peace comes from kindness," he said quietly. She looked up, her massive hand trembling slightly as she reached for the tin cup. For the first time in years, she smiled. But peace in the Wild West never lasted long. Outside, the distant sound of hooves echoed through the canyon. Caleb stepped to the door, peering into the night. 5 riders approached, torches flickering like demons in the dark. Outlaws. Nita rose slowly, towering like a storm. "They came for me," she said. "They've hunted me since the massacre." Caleb's stomach turned cold, but he stood his ground. "Then they'll have to go through both of us." Nita stared at him, astonished by the courage blooming in a man who'd never held a gun in anger. The virgin rancher had found something to fight for. The night exploded in gunfire. The outlaws stormed the ranch, whooping and hollering, bullets splintering the wooden walls. Caleb ducked behind a barrel, clutching his father's old rifle, his heart hammering like a drum. Nita moved like lightning. Her tomahawk flashed, her arrows sang through the dark, and one by one the shadows fell. Her movements were poetry and thunder combined. Caleb fired, trembling, missing twice but hitting once. When the dust cleared, 3 men lay still and the rest fled into the night. The ranch was half burned, the corral shattered, but they were alive. Caleb dropped his rifle, panting, as Nita stood among the wreckage, breathing hard. Blood streaked across her arms. The first rays of dawn touched her skin, and she looked like a goddess carved from sunrise. "You fought well," she said softly. "You were brave." Caleb shook his head. "No, I was scared," she smiled faintly. "Courage ain't the absence of fear, little rancher. It's standing when your heart tells you to run." They spent the morning rebuilding the fence side by side. For the first time, Caleb felt something awaken in him, a sense of purpose, a pride that came not from ownership, but from connection. Nita watched him hammer the boards with steady hands. "I thought men like you were gone," she said. "Men who fight not for glory, but for goodness." Caleb blushed beneath his dusty hat. "Guess the world still has surprises left." Days passed. The desert healed slowly, as did their hearts. Nita stayed, helping with the cattle, teaching him old Apache ways, how to read the wind, how to track storms, how to listen to silence. Caleb taught her to laugh again, to find joy in small things like the taste of coffee or the call of a hawk. They didn't speak of love, but it lived quietly between them, growing like wildflowers after rain. One evening, as they watched the sun sink again, Nita said, "I once said I was starving for a man. I see now I was starving for something else, kindness, peace, a place to belong." Caleb smiled. "You've got all that here. If you want it." She turned to him, her eyes soft for the first time. "Then I'll stay." The wind carried her words across the valley, and the desert seemed to sigh in relief. And so, in the heart of the wild frontier, 2 lonely souls found strength, not in violence but in compassion. Caleb, the quiet rancher, and Nita, the giant Apache warrior, taught the West that even the fiercest storms can't drown the human spirit. If this story touched your heart, remember, courage comes in many forms, and kindness can change destinies.